Welcome to the Mucked Up My Self-Care podcast.
I'm Jill from New York.
And I'm Linda from Tasmania.
We are two moms from opposite sides of the world who are living, demonstrating, and helping moms across the world build their self-care asset bank.
Ready to dive in? Messy, interrupted, imperfect, and most of all mucked up. Let's get going.
Good morning. Good evening. Good morning.
Just realised how many of these videos are in the dark. I worry about turning the light on because that way it's more likely to wake up or keep other children awake. So I sit here in the dark so often. It's actually quite where
doesn't have enough light over here, so
anyway, shall we get into highs, lows, and all the stuff in between?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so I'll jump in first.
Okay.
I think a high for me was I got a lot done this weekend, including getting out in the garden, which was really nice to just have a bit of time outside, and the kids were all over the place, just having a lot of fun, exploring different bits and pieces and jumping on the trampoline and just generally digging up trenches and helping pull out weeds and all sorts of stuff. So it was a beautiful, beautiful weekend to be able to do that. So it was good to get some more weeds out after they've gone a bit crazy. And I think the low, just there's a lot happening at the moment in our ramps, our odd ramps and our business lives and book launches coming up and all sorts of things. So there's a lot to get through. One thing at a time.
Thing at a time. You're doing it, though.
Indeed.
We're making moves.
Yes, exactly. Step by step. What about you? Highs, lows?
Let's see. My low is that Declan was probably the sickest he's ever been this weekend. Friday I was called from the middle of my day to come pick him up with a very high, not very high, but very high fever. And then he had a very bad earache and screamed in a different way that I never heard him scream. And that just tears you up inside when your kid just is in pain in a different way than you've ever experienced from the outside. And I'm sure it's even worse experiencing that pain for the first time as a person experiencing the pain. So it was very, very different. And I didn't know how to take care of him. So we did the best that we could. A little bit of medicine and things got better, but still, he's still on the mend. And it's, as we're recording this now on Monday, so it's still wearing him out. He's pretty lethargic still. Luckily, no fever anymore, but just, I don't know if it's allergy also, because he is just stuffed up and it is changing seasons. And it's just, I'm exhausted. I started my cycle a week early, and it's the second time in a row for that to happen. So that's got me on a low, and I'm just like, I need a win. So my high is all the little fun things that happened amidst all the other craziness, like celebrating baptisms this weekend and being out in the sunshine, trying to be not cooped up inside with all of the stuffiness. Celebrating birthdays. It's trying to find the little pieces through that feeling of misery of a child being sick for their behalf. So that's where we're at today.
It's very hard. Yep. Goodness. Especially having had a sick bubba fairly recently and toddler. Actually, he's been sick this week as well. So I've got 3 of them that have all been snotty. and he's had trouble breathing at night, and so he hasn't slept well. It's really, really tough. So tough, especially when you're not used to that or he's not had that before. So,
Yeah.
And I think they need us so much in those moments as well. They really do. And what we're going to be talking about today is the guilt that we can feel for that, because when we're going from a contributor in the household in a very different way, when you are perhaps working full time and not a parent yet, compared to that reliance on you, and maybe you can't work as much as you used to. Maybe you've shifted your work into a different space like you did after Declan was born. There's quite a lot of guilt, I think, that gets wrapped up into that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so much.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to just touch on your story briefly of what happened?
Recap of the transition there. So
I think that'd be great.
When I went on maternity leave obviously after Declan was born. We only had 3 months from my state job that I had, and I could have taken longer, but without pay. So I tried to take as much as I could, and then we made the decision, well, am I going to go back with Declan at 3 months old and put him into daycare and have my paycheck pay for daycare? Or do I not go back and I stay home and we don't have childcare? But then I have to figure out, what am I going to do? Because I still need to contribute, because we live in a very expensive place, and there's really no way in the setup that we have, with the house that we have, the things that we have worked for, we could continue living the way that we want to with only one income. So we needed to figure out, well, now with another person in our household, how are we going to manage this? And so that's where I went down the adventure of becoming an entrepreneur. Meanwhile, it is not equivalent to what I would have been doing should I had gone back to work and put Declan in daycare. However, it's allowing for our family to live how we wanted to.
Yeah.
That comes with having it not be equivalent to what it was before.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of pressure on you to then take on the very full-time role of being the dependable parent that is there, and being the one that takes on a lot of the emotional load and the mental load and the household load and the load of all of that other stuff. And we've talked a lot about this already, and we're going to talk more about it. But there's such a pressure, I think, that we put on ourselves at so many times to parent in a way which society or we expect of ourselves. And when you're doing it 24/7, it's hard work as well, especially if you perhaps got the P&D happening, or got no time for self-care or anything like that. So it can be really, really tricky. And just wanted to say that, really, to acknowledge it out loud about being a full-time 24/7 parent is hard, because there's an identity shift that happens when we're not able to contribute in a way that we used to, when we're not able to perhaps have the same job that we used to. We lose contact with a lot of those social networks and talking to other adults as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so grateful for these conversations, to be able to talk adult to adult and not just to a 3 and 1 year old all day. It's lovely as it is.
Yeah. I feel that we accidentally isolate ourselves because it's almost harder to go ahead outside of our home where having a virtual community like this that we're a part of, where we don't need to go out to a place in order to be in community, where we can get on a Zoom call or wherever we are, it makes it so convenient.
Yeah.
It does help with that transition, I think, in that shift of identity, because we're not changing, we're adding to us. We're adding more. I mean, we've added so much to our plates and responsibility in new adventures that we're taking. It's the whole give and take part of doing something completely different. We don't really lose ourselves, but we can get lost in everything that's being added to us. And I think that was probably one of the harder, it still is. It's still a struggle for me in being okay with taking that back seat to not contributing the way that I used to financially. And really, for me, it's the financial part where I have to step up in duties, I guess I'm going to call them. I have to step up in the housework. I have to step up in caring for other people. And I have to step up in caring for myself. I don't think I had to worry about taking care of myself as much before I had Declan, because it came almost more naturally. Like, it was just easy to do. Now it's harder because I am having to Tetris it inside of, well, where does it fit for today? And, you know, we've talked about that. Can't find time, won't make time. And that episode, like, with all the other things that we have going on because of our ever increasing plate, it feels like, where do we find all that?
So because it is a bit harder now, do you think you appreciate it more?
Oh, for sure. Like, I never would have even recognized that something I was doing then 4 years ago was self-care, and what it would do for me and or others because I had a full cup. Versus now, the awareness that I have for it and how it makes me better and makes what I do better, especially with others and my family. I hold on to that much more closely because I know the benefit of it. I see it. Like, I can see it on you, just even in our conversations, how when you're getting good self-care, our conversations can change. How you interact with your children can change. And how you present yourself to others can even change. So it's really cool to see when others are appreciating their self-care and how they're managing their bandwidth in order to get that in there. And then it helps make me aware of those who aren't appreciating or don't know how to do it yet, maybe, or are struggling to figure out how to do it, or might be feeling the guilt from these shifts in their lives as they transition in different aspects of being a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's all that sort of unpaid work as well, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite a cliche, but stuff that still has to be done.
What was I doing? It was I was looking at social media quotes last week to schedule out, and one of the quotes was, "A working mom is redundant." And I was like, "Yep," because moms work all the time. That's all we're about being a mom. Like, that's just a full-time work identity.
And so often we're juggling so many balls in the air. Trying to have a conversation while being interrupted is very common. Like those social connections again. I've got here and out in some of our notes, like talking to other adults rather than that toddler talk, or talking to other parents in the park as you save your kid from climbing that 10-foot slide or something. Like, it's just
2
so
words
disjointed.
Like, you get one sentence out and you have to go run off to go figure out what's happening, and then you come back and you're like, wait, where was I?
or they've disappeared and left, and you're like, oh,
They had to
that
go
was,
red.
yeah. So there's lots of shifts and changes that we obviously have to adapt to. And some days I think we do much better. But just to circle back to what you were talking about before about appreciation and realizing, like this weekend, I have had time to work on the book stuff and a bit of my stuff and get out in the garden. And then so tonight, when everything fell apart and we had quite a big blow up, I was able to manage it much more effectively, much more calmly than I would have done perhaps last week. Yeah. So there's living proof, if you like. Doesn't mean it's easy.
It took a long time to get to this place. And lots of practice. So keep practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. So the guilt as one of the many mixed emotions that we do have in feeling towards the going from contributor to more of a dependent role. It's interesting because not only are we going from a contributor to a dependent, we're also being depended on by our little people.
Yeah.
So in speaking to the guilt specifically, how have you managed to wade through that, if you like, or accept that or surrender to that, or like what's been part of your process, do you think?
What is? I feel like my process currently is how best to avoid the whole thing, which is all wrong. And I don't have the best practice on how to avoid the guilt that comes with this, because it is an ongoing struggle for me to be okay with the little bit that I contribute financially. And the days that I become lazy and don't want to contribute labor wise, we'll say, like actually physically do the responsibilities of what I have to do, pick up after myself, to pick up after Declan, not necessarily pick up after the whole house, but like the views I have on shared household things, but also the things that I can just be doing, I feel lazy doing. And it's that weird struggle for me of, well, I didn't bring in half of what I used to be able to bring in. And I was so not feeling doing anything around the house that I'm just not, I'm like a worthless human being at this point. And that just makes me feel even more blah. But then I realized I took care of another human being, and myself, and we both survived today. And I think that little bit of, did we eat? Did we sleep? Are we alive? Are we going to wake up tomorrow morning? Or what at least keep me going into the next day to say, we just do better tomorrow. We did what we needed to do today, and tomorrow's a new day. Let's head at it again.
Yeah, exactly.
What about for you? What's helping you conquer that guilt on your end?
A bit like you, just trying to remember that I'm included in a lot of that picture. Moving helps a lot, just getting outside into the garden or going to the gym or taking a walk is another one, which really does help a lot. But I guess I know that I fall into the trap more of the anxiety that comes. I don't think I'm very good at handling that yet in the middle of the night when I can't get up and necessarily just go and do something as physical about it. That's hard to get out of that anxiety stuff sometimes. Hard to avoid, if you like.
Yeah, the 3 a.m. wake ups from your mind racing all of a sudden.
Yeah.
This reminds me of our friend Yvonne Marchese and her book In Full Bloom, and what she does with the age agitators and living playfully as we age. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably one of the better things that I've adopted from both her and our other friend Kim White, with like, where are my priorities in this? And yes, I feel guilty that I am not working a full-time job and being able to bring in the money that I used to. And I did all the schooling to have a trade, and I'm not using it the same way that I intended on 5 years ago and all this stuff. But I'm not that same version of me. I'm a new and improved version with a child, and he is the new priority. And being able to take into consideration the season that he brings me into each time things change is, well, where does that focus when I'm with him need to be? And it's being playful with him, growing up with him and doing what we need to do, and keeping that mindset of I can be playful too, and that I can bring that play to everything that I do, and I can make it joyful for me. So work doesn't have to feel so heavy, but I can still contribute in other ways and be creative on how I'm contribute. And does that take the guilt off just a tiny bit? And it does tend to, for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think by approaching it in that way, it's also much more of that flow and effect for Declan and for my four.
Yeah.
They do definitely pick up on a lot more of that energy than the anxiety and the guilt and all of those things, because while they might not be said out loud, they can feel that, a lot of what we're feeling too.
Declan's recently been asking how my day has been, and he can tell when I'm upset, and it's the cutest thing, and I just feel so seen by such a tiny human who I didn't think could see those kinds of things. It's like, aw, thanks, bud, for asking.
Yeah, I love it. I still love it when the kids ask. And Josh, the eldest now, he sort of says it really casually, like, cool dude. Like, so how's your day, Mum? Like, how's your day been? It's like really crazy, cool. So grown up about it. So it's very cool. Yeah, very sweet. Yeah. So, well,
shifting that guilt is definitely not an easy feat. And I know for me, when I first started out, I did not want to do a lot of the self-care things that costed money, because if I wasn't bringing money in, I wasn't able to spend the money. In my own head, that was my mentality. My husband never said a word of that, and he was always, you have permission to do whatever, it's our money. And for me, it was, nope, that's not it. I'm not spending your money on little things that will make me feel better. So I started to do a lot of free things, and that's probably where I think a lot of my top 5 come into play, is that they're all my one. That was where I wanted to spend my money and my nails, but everything else was what could I do that didn't cost me something, which would make me feel more guilt. So did you see that in some of your self-care activities too when you were?
Absolutely. Yeah, so much. And as you said, it's about getting creative in the different ways that we can introduce play or incorporate our children, or just approach it from a different angle, because again, a lot of what we're fed is costly or paid or that sort of thing. So yeah, it's really something that you've had probably done fairly naturally for me in some ways, that just find ways. So yeah.
And the little list that we put together of things that we would have done back in our first few months postpartum all took that same route of things that were costless. They did not have a cost in it unless, of course, we needed childcare and we were to do them alone. But this is definitely one of the things that I think we both did a lot of, which was take a walk. And it seems so silly to say out loud, like, no, duh, but it really is. Like, no, duh, go take a walk.
Here's your permission. Here's your reminder. Here's your... Absolutely. It helps a lot. Just moving, just appreciating, and sunshine or snow or whatever.
out of the house. But there's a whole bunch of other ideas that we do have and can share. Feel free to reach out to us via the email, which is in the show notes. Love to start up a conversation and see where you're at on your self-care adventure.
Absolutely. Yes. And we always love hearing from others, and we'll reply with our best sort of tips that we've found, and a lot of them, like Jill said, are that low cost as well. So
then until next week, Linda.
Yes, indeed. We hope you can unstuck your muck. Bye.